Join me as I dive deep into the dark legacy of Irma Grese and uncover the truth behind her actions at Auschwitz. Irma Grese is one of the most infamous female figures of the Holocaust, and for good reason. She was an SS guard at the notorious Auschwitz concentration camp. Her brutal and sadistic treatment of prisoners earned her the chilling nickname, the Beautiful Beast. But who was Irma Grese, really? What drove her to commit such atrocities, and what can we learn from her twisted tale? She was more than just a brutal guard. She was a symbol of the dark side of human nature, a demonstration of how quickly ordinary people can become complicit in extraordinary evil. Her story serves as a reminder that the Holocaust was not just a product of Nazi ideology, but also from the decisions, actions, and ethical values of individual participants. Irma Grese was a complex, multifaceted individual, driven by a mix of motivations that can be both fascinating and terrifying. It's easy to view Irma Grese as a monstrous, one-dimensional villain who committed atrocities just for the sake of it. However, that's not the whole truth. She was a product of her time, a victim of circumstance, and also a perpetrator of crimes against humanity. Born in Rechen, Germany, on October 7, 1923, in the midst of Germany's tumultuous times, Irma Grese grew up in a society increasingly consumed by radical ideologies, where the fervour of Nazi beliefs was rapidly spreading. Although her family wasn't explicitly politically active, they were likely influenced by the prevailing atmosphere. Grese grew up in a rural, politically tumultuous environment. Her upbringing in the interwar period coincided with the rise of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party, which would have a profound influence on her life and character. Grese's early years were marked by personal and familial instability. Her mother's suicide in 1936, when Grese was just 13 years old, deeply affected her, and her father was a strict authoritarian. At the age of 16, she became a member of the League of German Girls, a segment of the Hitler Youth that aimed to indoctrinate young women in Nazi principles, extolling traits such as obedience, Aryan superiority, and unwavering allegiance to the Führer. As a young woman, Grese sought to escape the constraints of her rural upbringing. After multiple failed attempts to pursue a career in nursing, she turned to the Schutzstaffel, or SS, which offered her a sense of purpose and belonging. At the young age of 19, in 1942, Irma Grese joined the SS, becoming a female guard at Ravensbrück, a women's concentration camp. This marked the beginning of her rapid ascent into the ranks of the Nazi regime's apparatus of terror. Her cruel and sadistic conduct quickly earned her a notorious reputation. Despite her attractive, blonde, and blue-eyed appearance representing the Nazi ideal, a sinister darkness lurked beneath her Aryan facade that would soon manifest itself in the most horrific ways. Grese was transferred to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where she quickly earned a reputation for her brutal treatment of prisoners. As a senior female guard, Grese exercised significant power and authority over the camp's inmates, many of whom were women and children. Her position allowed her to commit acts of unspeakable cruelty, and she became known for her sadistic tendencies. Survivors of Auschwitz recounted stories of Grese's violent outbursts, her frequent beatings of prisoners, and her enjoyment of inflicting pain. Grese was notorious for her involvement in selecting prisoners for the gas chambers. Witnesses described how she would stroll through the barracks, often with her whip in hand, smiling as she sent countless individuals to their deaths. Her distinctive appearance, blonde hair, blue eyes, and youthful looks stood in stark contrast to the barbarity of her actions, earning her the nickname the Beautiful Beast. In early 1945, as the Soviet army advanced, Grese was transferred to Bergen-Belsen. The conditions at Belsen were horrific, with overcrowded barracks, rampant disease, and mass starvation. Grese, now a senior SS officer, continued her reign of terror, showing no sympathy for the suffering prisoners. Even as the war was drawing to a close, her sadism remained unchecked, solidifying her place among the most reviled figures of the Holocaust. But what drove her to commit such atrocities? Was it a desire for power, a need for control, or something deeper? It's impossible to say for certain, but one thing is clear. Irma Grese was a product of the Nazi regime, a regime that fostered an environment of hate, fear, and division. As we explore the complexities of Irma Grese's character, it's essential to acknowledge the broader context in which she operated. Women played a crucial role in the concentration camps, serving as guards, overseers, and even administrators. They were active participants in the Nazi machinery, often volunteering for positions that gave them a sense of authority and purpose. Women like Irma Grese were drawn to the SS because it offered them a way out of the domestic sphere, a chance to break free from the traditional gender roles that had been imposed upon them. Many of these women were young, impoverished, and lacked access to education, and they faced limited prospects in a society that was deeply patriarchal. For individuals like Grese, who were young and deeply indoctrinated with Nazi ideology, it may have been all too easy to internalize these beliefs to the extent that acts of brutality became commonplace. While her actions were deeply disturbing, they were not isolated incidents. Numerous guards at Auschwitz, both male and female, engaged in similar acts of violence and cruelty. At the same time, it is crucial not to absolve Grese of responsibility for her actions by claiming she was merely a product of her time. The story of Irma Grese serves as a powerful example of how individuals can become entangled in extraordinary evil due to circumstances. She epitomized the Nazi regime, embodying its values, ideology, and moral ambiguities. While indoctrination certainly played a significant role, Grese actively made choices, choosing to abuse her power, inflict harm on innocent people, and engage in behavior that surpassed the already horrific norms of the concentration camp system. The moral complexity of her character is what makes her story so chilling. She wasn't merely a faceless cog in the Nazi machine. Rather, she was a person who derived pleasure from her position of power and authority over those she viewed as inferior. She was not just a brutal guard, but a human being with her own motivations and desires. With the collapse of Nazi Germany imminent, Bergen-Belsen was liberated by British forces in April 1945. Irma Grese, along with other SS personnel, was arrested and placed on trial during the Belsen trials, one of the first major war crime tribunals after World War II. As one of the rare women to face trial and be found guilty of war crimes following World War II, Grese's trial became a defining moment in the post-war examination of Nazi atrocities. Her gender played a significant role in the public's fascination with her case. Society, at the time, was not accustomed to viewing women as capable of such calculated and brutal violence, which made Grese's case all the more shocking. Many found it difficult to reconcile her outward appearance, blonde, youthful, and attractive, with the monstrous actions she was accused of committing. But behind the sensational headlines lay a complex, multifaceted individual, driven by a mix of motivations that were both fascinating and terrifying. During her trial at the Belsen trials in 1945, Grese remained largely unrepentant, showing little to no remorse for her actions. The testimonies against her were overwhelming, with survivors recounting her brutality in vivid detail. Eyewitnesses described Irma Grese's sadistic behavior, her love of beating prisoners, and her twisted sense of humor. One survivor recalled how Grese had set her dogs on a group of women, watching with amusement as they were attacked. Despite overwhelming evidence of her crimes, Grese remained defiant and unrepentant during the trial. Her defense rested on the claim that she was following orders, a common refrain among Nazi war criminals, but this argument held little weight in light of the brutality she had displayed. On November 17, 1945, Irma Grese, a female SS guard at the Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen concentration camps, was found guilty of committing war crimes during the Holocaust. She was sentenced to death by hanging. This made her one of the relatively few women to be executed for their roles in the Holocaust. On December 13, 1945, Irma Grese, a female guard in the Nazi concentration camps, met her fate at the age of 22 when she was executed at Hamelin prison in Germany. Her execution was carried out by the renowned British hangman Albert Pierrepoint, who was well known for his efficiency in carrying out executions. Alongside Grese, two other female guards, Elisabeth Volkenrath and Juana Bormann, were also sentenced to hang for their involvement in the atrocities committed in the camps. This case reflected the seriousness of their crimes, challenging the traditional view that women were less likely to engage in such acts of cruelty. Pierrepoint, who had performed many executions, noted Grese's stoicism and lack of remorse even in her final moments. She reportedly refused a blindfold and walked with a calm and defiant demeanor to the gallows. According to some accounts, her final words were simply "schnell," the German word for quickly, a request for the execution to be over as soon as possible. This calmness, coupled with her youth, added to the eerie and unsettling nature of her final moments. Grese's death by hanging was one of the first executions of female Nazi war criminals, further heightening public fascination. The manner of her death symbolized a reckoning, not only for Grese, but for the many women who participated in the Nazi machinery of death. It also signaled to the world that women, just as much as men, could be capable of extraordinary cruelty under the right circumstances. Grese's execution didn't just mark the end of a single life. It became a symbol of the broader moral questions surrounding justice, accountability, and the human capacity for evil. The public perception of Irma Grese was that of a monster, a cold-blooded killer who reveled in the suffering of others. And this perception is not misplaced. Her actions during the Holocaust were not driven by any form of moral ambiguity or circumstance. They were acts of pure cruelty, fueled by sadism and a blind allegiance to a hateful ideology. Irma Grese was not a victim of her time, but an active participant in one of history's greatest atrocities, and her story is one that should evoke disgust and horror. Grese's legacy is one of unrelenting brutality and sadism, and it exemplifies the depths to which human nature can sink when unchecked by conscience or humanity. She doesn't represent the complexity of human nature. She represents a failure of it. The atrocities she committed were not the result of ordinary people caught up in extraordinary circumstances. They were the choices of someone who embraced and enjoyed cruelty. Grese's willingness to inflict suffering on innocent people, to revel in the fear and pain of others, reveals her as a person devoid of empathy or basic human decency. Today, as we honor the victims of the Holocaust, we must also face the cold, hard truth about the perpetrators. These individuals, like Grese, chose to inflict suffering and death on millions. Their stories are not complex or morally ambiguous. They are warnings of what happens when hatred, bigotry, and cruelty are allowed to flourish unchecked. Irma Grese was not a complicated figure struggling with her humanity. She was a sadistic murderer who took pleasure in her power over others. Her legacy is not a reflection of our own moral grey areas, but a reminder of the clear line between good and evil. Grese's story is not a tale of human complexity. It's a chilling reminder that some individuals willingly cross the line into monstrous behaviour. We must never allow ourselves to romanticize or overanalyze her actions. Her choices were deliberate, calculated, and cruel, and she deserves to be remembered for what she was, a willing and eager participant in one of the darkest chapters of human history. In the end, Irma Grese's legacy is a dark stain on humanity. It serves as a powerful warning of the horrors that can occur when individuals, especially those in positions of power, allow hatred and cruelty to dominate their actions. Her life and her crimes remind us of the importance of standing against bigotry, cruelty, and unchecked authority at every turn. Grese's story is not one of moral ambiguity. It is a tale of unredeemed evil, and we must never lose sight of that. Her legacy forces us to confront the brutal reality that some people revel in cruelty, and we must ensure that such evil never takes root again. So, what do you think of Irma Grese's legacy? Was she a cold-blooded killer who embraced her role in one of history's greatest atrocities? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to check out more of our dark and strange history videos.